Hey. Hi guys. I'm just heading off live now. We're starting to watch the attendees float in. So just give you guys a couple of seconds to log in. Cool. So welcome to our Everest Experience Lecture Series. I'm Caroline. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm the General Manager of Climbing the Seven Summits. And we've got some awesome panelists and some moderators for you. In a second, I'm going to start sharing my screen out so that you can get to know them, but I'm just watching the attendee count still coming in. So I'm just going to give them another minute or so before I start doing that. So bear with us. Also, while we're waiting, and I'll cover this again, you guys can open your chat boxes and send us all your questions as we go. We've got a lot of ground to cover in a pretty short amount of time. So if you've got any questions for our panelists or for me or for Mike, chuck them in that chat box and we'll try and get to them at the end. Cool. So I'm going to share my screen out. And forgive me, we are mountaineers, we're not zoomies. So if things are a little jittery every now and again, you can blame me. I'm definitely not that technologically literate, but we'll give it a go anyway. So anyway, you can see me up on your screen, but there I am. I'm your moderator. I'm your host for today. Basically, that means that you get to blame me for those technical difficulties. Doesn't need any introduction. Mike is with us. Mike's 6 times Everest summiteer. He's the author of that guidebook, Climbing the Seven Summits, that I know that you've all put on your Amazon wish list or already read. He's also our Everest expedition leader, and you know, Mike's led thousands of people to summits all across the world. I think he's led over 120 expeditions worldwide, and 25 of those above 8,000 meters. So Mike, you're around. I don't know if you're on mute or not, but say hello.
Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks for joining us.
And I thought I'd actually ask you a question, if you don't mind, Mike, about basically the fact that you've seen so many of those people to the summit. What's your, can you define a couple of character traits which make people successful? Or, you know, you've said a couple of times you can pick summiteers from the trek into base camp. What makes people successful?
Well, I think it's really a combination of traits. It's not just one thing. But you know, generally people that are successful on these bigger peaks like Everest, you see a total dedication and focus to a big goal. So kind of that single-mindedness is super important. People that are willing to persevere and suffer, you know, just the ability to suffer and know that you're going to be uncomfortable on a peak like Mount Everest for a long period of time, and to be able to push through that suffering and continue to persevere is super important. And then I think, you know, another really important trait is, well, a couple more, is just the attention to detail. You know, if you have your systems dialed and you're doing things the same way every time, you're going to be successful. If you're not lazy, if you dot your I's and cross your T's, you're going to be successful on the peak. And you know, I think also showing up prepared is super important. And you know, I think that's one reason why Mark and PS, who are joining us today, were successful last year. They did their homework. They researched the route. They came physically prepared. They gave their lives, and
Mark's a panelist. That's
why they were successful. So.
Perfect. So PS, we've got PS Sim, who is an ultra trail endurance athlete. She summited Everest last year on our team. She's joining us from Singapore. So a very good morning to PS. PS, welcome. Thanks for coming. You were, you know, a great part of our team last year. One of the questions I had for you is, you know, if there's one thing that you wish you had known before, you know, you set off on your Everest expedition that you know now, having summited, what would that one little golden nugget piece of advice to yourself be?
Hey, hi, morning everyone from Singapore. So I think like Mark said, sorry, like what Mike said, I actually did my research and all. So if kind of on reflection, if there was one thing, just a small nugget, because I like to eat and snack a lot, favorite pastime in Singapore, I kind of wish I brought more snacks up to Camp 4 while we were waiting for pre-summit and just get to snack and munch in my tent. But really just little things, little like comfort stuff like that makes the expedition a lot more bearable.
Nice one. And throwing over to you now, Mark, other panelists. Guys, Mark is joining us from Miami. He's an Everest summiteer with our team last year as well. He's a private wealth advisor and once upon a time was an officer in the US Army. So again, really lucky to have these guys show up for us from all around the world. But same question to you, Mark. Like if you knew one thing now that you wish you'd known then, what would it be?
You know, the thing you cannot fix once you get to Everest is getting in shape. You can, there's a lot of time, you can fix a lot of things, you can dial in a lot of things, but that's one thing. And I would say particularly endurance shape, you just can't possibly have enough because you can't possibly quite understand what test you might be put to have to test that endurance. And so I would say above everything else, and it was my second attempt, but above everything else, I think coming in endurance shape is by far the number one thing. And I would have done more and you just can't possibly do enough.
Nice one. That's awesome. Good advice. So we're going to get lots more little tidbits of advice from these guys as we go through. But just while we're watching people, I'm still watching that attendee count rise too. I just kind of wanted to get a little bit of an idea from all of you as to where you are, where are you tuning in from in the world right now? So what continent are you on? I'm just going to see, I'm playing now with my technology and doing a poll. This is pretty cool. I can see how many people have voted, how many people are doing their homework. Awesome, nearly everyone's voted. So I have to apologize. It's actually probably my fault, the poor 1%, the 3 people who have come in from Africa, a couple of people from Europe. That's my fault that you guys are all up at like 1 in the morning, because as a token Aussie, it's usually my fault that I usually have to get up at 1 in the morning to do worldwide phone calls. So you can blame me, but so here you go. You can see where everyone is coming from. Most of you are all from North America, which is pretty cool. And again, that attendee account still rising, which is really cool. So we've got most of you are coming in from North America. The next one, let's get a little bit of a snapshot about what your experience level is. That was really interesting to us as you signed up to find out kind of where, you know, what you'd done before and what your experience level was. And it's just been so impressive to see that, you know, we've got post-Everest summiteers, we've got people who haven't even climbed at all, people who haven't climbed anything and are interested, or that just are interested in Everest and don't have any ambition to climb it. So lots of different levels of experience. So I think we'll have lots of cool questions to cover, which is awesome. Cool, nearly everyone's voted. I don't know, can you guys see, as attendees, you probably can only view it, but as the host, I can see how many people have voted already. So I'm going to stop it there soon and we'll get a little bit of an understanding if you want to grab your last minute votes in as to what you've done. Cool, let's share that out. So most people have climbed, trekked above 5,000 meters, and then we've got 2 big groups, kind of 6,000, 7,000. And we do have quite a lot of experience on our team there, with 9% of people have already climbed Everest. So you've got lots of cumulative experience in the room, which is really cool. So hopefully lots of nice juicy questions. So let's kind of get into have I already shown you? Yeah, I've shared you the vote, shown you guys the results of that. So let's kind of get into the meat and potatoes of how this thing works and why we're doing it. So Obviously we're doing it, you know, coronavirus has us all dreaming of the mountains, and we can't play in them right now, but what we can do is we can, you know, hope to educate everyone so that they're better prepared. And we've found as a company, as a guide service, that really it's having people really well prepared that makes them safe and successful climbers, educated, knowing what to expect. And in turn, that means that the mountain in general becomes safer as people are more experienced and better prepared as they head into the mountain. So that's why we're doing it. And we also kind of believe in the power of the mountains to really inspire people and transform them. So we want to keep those dreams alive while we're all feeling a little bit cabin feverish here in our houses from around the world. So anyway, how it's going to work, guys, is we're going to show you clips, videos of sections of the route. We're going to climb the mountain together, starting all the way back in Kathmandu. And each main leg of the climb we're going to break down, and then we're going to chat to our panelists. It's a great place to put those chats. We're already getting some questions coming in on the chat, but keep them coming. And then after each section, after each video, we'll have a brief discussion. We won't touch on everything. And then at the end, if we've got time, we'll come back to it. And this is the first of 3 episodes that we'll be doing. So we will be doing a lot more episodes. So with that, I think that's pretty much our housekeeping out of the way. Let's go into the Himalaya, shall we? The Himalaya, the highest points on our planet. Born from a mighty collision of tectonic plates so powerful it pushed the Earth above the clouds. The centre point, Mount Everest. Standing at 8,850 metres, it is both spectacular and formidable. It attracts mountaineers from all over the world as the ultimate challenge. These are goal-driven people willing to commit themselves to the dedication that it takes to earn the privilege of standing for a few minutes on the summit, looking out over our world. Not to be underestimated, Mount Everest is not just an enormous physical feat, it is also a mental test of perseverance. So what separates those who succeed from those who fail? Strategy, experience, teamwork, vision, execution. Everest, it has the power to transform ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. Do you have what it takes? Okay, cool. So that's going to give you a taste. Hopefully there's not too much lag. I know there might be a wee bit of delay, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of taste. So basically our journey begins long before our climb even starts. And we've got a little snippet of that again to keep getting you in the vibe and getting you to Everest. Our Everest journey begins long before we step foot on the mountain. With up to a year worth of training, tens of thousands of dollars invested, gear purchased, families farewelled, a lot is on the line by the time we reach Kathmandu. A bustling hub, this city is truly alive during the Everest season, with climbers coming from all corners of the globe. We spend a few days in town undertaking final preparations, doing gear checks and team briefings before we fly into the Khumbu Valley. First into Lukla, the most unique airport in the world, carved into the side of a mountain situated at 9,383 feet. Here we meet our army of yaks and porters who will assist us to transport our personal gear up the valley. This is the ultimate supply line and has already been in action for months. Only accessible by foot, every ounce of food and hundreds of tons of equipment that is the lifeblood of our expedition and shall sustain us for 2 months has already either been carried in or helicoptered to base camp. It is roughly a 13-day trek into base camp. Our approach is slow and steady, allowing us to acclimatise properly to the rarefied air and mitigate risks of altitude illness. The trek is spectacular and a great opportunity for the team to get to know each other and align behind a shared vision
creating lifelong friendships. Our Everest itinerary remains flexible to give us contingency where we need it.
Deal with whatever the mountain and the weather gives you.
Above the tree line, teams have two options: go straight to base camp or take advantage of climbing L'Hôtse East, a spectacular 6,000 metre peak.
We're down here on L'Hôtse Peak. We're down here to shake out the climb and make sure everyone is up to speed on their technical climbing. But we're down here to actually get on some steep terrain, see how people do climbing before we venture into the icefall.
We undertake extensive skills clinics before setting out on the climb itself.
We're getting ready. We're going to do a little dry run. We're up here at High Camp, L'Hôtse. Get our spikes on, get all our gear, kind of work out all the kinks, make sure we get our harness on correctly, and yeah, just make things a little smoother for tomorrow morning when we take off out of here in the dark.
We're going to get up about 2 a.m. and start walking at 3.
The strategy in climbing L'Hôtse is to reduce our overall risk. The climb itself counts as an acclimatisation rotation, thus eliminating a further unnecessary trip through the Khumbu icefall, not to mention the upside of attaining another spectacular Himalayan summit. After a successful rotation, our bodies are now acclimatised to a new high point, and we return to the trail for a final push to base camp, our new home away from home. Hey guys, at Climbing the 7 Summits, we're pretty proud of our Everest base camp. Come and take a look around. From the moment you arrive, we want you to feel at home. The heart of base camp is our big house, a huge geodesic dome with spectacular views over the icefall. It's the perfect place to unwind, prepare and strategise, and it's even big enough to host the famous annual CTSS Big House Party. With full insulation, heating, carpeted floors and comfortable chairs, it's the ultimate place to recover from your climbing. You can even watch a movie or two between rotations. The same goes for our oversized dining tents, which are of course heated and feature wide tables and comfortable chairs. We even custom designed a washroom in the entrance, because the key to a long expedition is not getting sick. The magic happens in the kitchen, which is a fully equipped catering kitchen with gas, full-size baking ovens and prep areas for our 5-star chefs. Given where we are, and remembering that almost everything has to be hand carried in, you're not going to believe the quality of the food that comes out of here. Your personal tent is extra large with added height and a 6-inch thick mattress to keep you incredibly warm and make sure you're well rested. But we know that you're going to be spending a lot of time here, and your recuperation is vital to your success. So we've gone above and beyond to give you the added option of upgrading to either our Everest Associate 2-room tents, which give you full standing room and a workstation if you need to keep up with the office, or our luxury Everest Executive Personal Domes with electricity, a queen-size bed, windows and plenty of space. They seriously redefine the Everest experience and no expense has been spared. We've got spacious 2-room Western-style WCs with hot water wash basins to keep things hygienic and plenty of room for you to privately go about your business. The view's not bad either. Our communication centre is where the back-of-house operations happen, from reviewing the state-of-the-art weather reports to monitoring the radio and strategising amongst your guides to ensure your success and your safety. What makes Base Camp truly special isn't all these amazing facilities at your disposal, but the Climbing the 7 Summits Sherpa team, who are so attentive that you aren't going to want for anything. We really believe that well-rested, happy, healthy climbers have the best chance at the summit, so why not stack the odds in your favour? While there's plenty of time for R&R, our training isn't over. We continue to hone our skills until they are second nature with extensive ladder training, fixed rope climbing and rappelling, and oxygen clinics. Our strategy and rotation timings are orchestrated by a seasoned expedition leader. Think of them like an air traffic controller who can always see the bigger picture and makes key decisions with all the information at hand. Before our climb can begin, we partake in a traditional Sherpa puja ceremony to ask for safe passage on the mountain. On an auspicious day, a High Lama will conduct the ceremony. Drifting juniper smoke is believed to purify one's soul. Our climbing equipment is blessed, and we make offerings as a team. We are now ready, and our prayer flags are raised high above our camp, where they will fly for the duration of our climb.
Okay, guys, we've had some really great questions, and sorry, I've just adjusted the chat there so that you guys can see some of the questions and answers coming in. But we've had some really great questions about that Lobouchet, the difference with that Lobouchet, doing a rotation on Lobouchet and acclimatization rotation on Lobouchet. So I'm going to let Mike kind of answer that question. Mike, you've done it both ways. You've acclimatized by going straight to base camp and climbing the peak without climbing Lobouchet, and you've obviously done Lobouchet, and we do Lobouchet as a company. Why is that? Why is Lobouchet good in your opinion?
Yeah, we've done it both ways, and overwhelmingly it seems like people appreciate having that Lobouchet option. First and foremost, safety is paramount. That's really what drives us to make the decisions that we make throughout the entire expedition. And to be able to do to climb another peak like Lobouchet and save one rotation through the icefall. The icefall is somewhat dangerous. It's a dynamic environment, and to mitigate that risk by reducing one trip through there is important. It's also great training for Everest. It's very Everest specific terrain, and to be able to spend some time down there, do some training, get on some steep terrain before getting on Everest is really important. But also, you spend so much time at Everest Base Camp. You're there for over a month. I think it's nice to have a little bit of a diversion there and just kind of break up the amount of time that you're spending at Everest Base Camp. So, the main reason is safety, but I think it's just a great option that people have really appreciated over the years.
Awesome, thanks. And Mark, I'm going to throw to you quickly. Mark, what do you feel about how does the climbing on Lobouchet compare to the other peaks? Like how does that compare to Everest climbing on Lobouchet? That was one of our questions that we had coming in for Mark.
For me, so one of the huge advantages, I think, in the big picture of CTSS was the ability to customize. And so when we went to do Lobouchet, I was one-on-one with Big Tindy. And so even what CTSS was doing in terms of customizing, bringing the margin of safety, making it much better by doing a Lobouchet climb, and I wouldn't do it any other way. But even being, one-on-one with Big Tindy, we even did Lobouchet a little bit differently, because he told me from the beginning, we're not going to summit. And I was crushed. What do you mean we're not going to summit? He said, we're not going to summit. Everybody else went for the summit of Lobouchet, and we went to about almost 19,000 feet. And we just stayed there and watched James Bond movies in a tent that one of his friends had set up. It was the most surreal sort of thing. And I was incredibly disappointed, but I knew that I was being guided in a bespoke way, and that what it was actually doing for my acclimatization and for my safety was going to be incredibly important going forward. So number one, CTSS had a great strategy around going to Lobouchet in the first place, and then it was further customized by my one-on-one guide, Big Tindy.
Awesome, cool. And in the essence of time, guys, if you've got any more questions about Lobouchet, chuck them in that chat box. We won't be able to get to all of the questions. We've got some great ones coming in about COVID, sponsorship, all of that. We'll try and get to them at the end. And you can also ask them of us. We'll give you our contact details later. So let's move on now to the next poll. Now, this is I just wanted to get a really quick snapshot of what, as an audience, what your opinion is on what the hardest part of the climb is. What do you guys think is, hold on, let me just get the poll all ready for you. What do you guys think would be the hardest section of the climb? Do you think that it's going through the icefall while you're still acclimatizing that first time through the icefall? Do you think it's up the LHOTSE face? Is it the summit bid, or is it the descent? So I'll just let you guys have a second to chuck in your votes there. And then we'll give you a quick insight just from the panelists and from Mike as to what they think is the hardest section of the climb. We've nearly got everyone's vote in. Quick, quick, quick. Nice one, guys. All right, cool. One more second and I'm going to end it there and we'll share those results. So most people, majority of people actually think that the descent is the hardest part. I'm going to quickly go to PS. PS, what do you think is the hardest part of the climb?
For me, I think it's the going through the Khumbu icefall, just because we have to go through it so many times, and it's kind of very undulating, going up and down, and a very long stretch. So for me personally, that was the most mental part. Nice.
And Mark, what do you think is the hardest part?
For me, it was the descent from the summit back down to Camp 4. I'd rather climb up than climb down any day, and I had a particularly difficult summit day. I got sick on the way up, and so it just stretched out and out and out. So the descent back down to Camp 4 for me was particularly hair-raising and difficult.
Finally, Mike, you've done it just a few times now. What's the hardest part for you personally?
Personally, I always dread the first trip up the LHOTSE face. You know, it's really the first time you're starting to do the real steep, consistent climbing. You're getting really high without oxygen. It's just kind of in your face climbing, and it's a long stretch up that LHOTSE face, especially the first time when you're not acclimatized. So for me, that's always the hardest day of the expedition.
Nice one. Cool. Well, let's get onto the mountain proper, shall we? And just before we do that, I want to show you guys kind of a 3D animation of the entire route. So we've got you up to base camp from now, and now we're going to show you the next video will be tackling that Khumbu icefall. Then we'll go into the Western Coombe, all the way up past Camp 2 to the LHOTSE face. And finally, our final section, our final video will be the South Col, so Camp 4 to the summit. So that's the climb that we have ahead of us. That gives you a bit of an idea of the scale with that 3D animation there. So let's jump into the first leg of the actual climb itself, journey up to Camp 1 through the icefall.
Having acclimatized at base camp, we are now ready for our first rotation, which will take us up and beyond Camp 1, climbing our way through the famed Khumbu icefall. A river of falling ice. It is formed as a glacier descends a steep section and turns into a jumble of deep crevasses and blocks of ice which can range anywhere from the size of a car to a house. It is estimated that the glacier advances 3 to 4 feet down the mountain every day. The safest route is established and maintained by tenured climbing Sherpa called icefall doctors, who fix the lines and bridge the crevasses. We leave well before sunrise, when the glacier has frozen during the night and is less able to move. As the intense sunlight warms the area, friction between the ice structures lessens, and the chance of crevasses opening and blocks falling increases as the day wears on.
Been up since about 3. It's about 6 a.m. now. Just getting into the heart of it. We're walking on a jumbled glacier with huge blocks of ice towering above us. Pretty intimidating. We've heard the glacier moving several times already this morning. Gaining some altitude. You can tell I'm breathing hard.
It is here where you finally feel that the trekking has ended and your ascent of Everest has truly begun.
This is what life in the Khumbu icefall is like. may seem glamorous, it may seem like an extreme sport, but the reality is it's just moving very slow, one foot in front of the other, moving through blocks of ice that weigh tons upon tons.
Because of the dynamic nature of the glacier, you need to move continuously, which can be very strenuous on your first rotation as you're still acclimatizing.
You can see all the new debris from this loose ice slope right here. We're moving quickly through this section, probably the most dangerous section we've seen so far. All this debris is just within the last couple days. So gives you some idea how dynamic this Khumbu icefall is.
Climbing through the icefall is actually one of the trickiest parts of the ascent, and some climbers are surprised by it. There are nuances in the technical skill required, the timing, crowding, and danger mitigation. There's a lot of up and down, jumaring, vertical ice walls, delicate ladder crossings, and tenuous climbing. It is not only physical, but requires high levels of focus.
You can see the prayers written on my helmet for safe passage through the icefall up to the summit. Really, the real danger here in the icefall is not what's immediately above you, it's what's way above you. These are some of the towering ice blocks, and then on these peaks way up above us, that's what came down in 2014. That hanging ice, vertical mile above us.
While there is significant objective danger in the icefall, years of experience help to navigate these obstacles more smoothly. Climbing the icefall can take anywhere between 3 and 6 hours. Cresting the last vertical wall and emerging into the western Khum is a great achievement.
Well done.
Oh my gosh.
It's Camp 1 ahead of us. All right, come on in. Nice work. It was about a 6-hour effort at sea level, or even, 14,000 feet, 4,000 meters. That would take you no time at all, maybe an hour or two. Back home in Seattle, I climbed Mount Si, 3,000 vertical feet, in exactly an hour. We did less than that today, and it took us 6 hours, to give you an idea how limiting.
Oh my gosh, my God. That's totally my fault, guys. I'm busy trying to navigate, and 1 second. I knew there'd be a technological drama. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen for 1 second. I'm going to go back to that just so that we can pick it up. I clicked off on my mouse doing the chat. So 1 second, bear with me. I promise this is me learning the ropes. We can climb mountains. We might not be perfect at Zoom, but we'll get better. Okay, so hopefully you guys can all see my screen now. And if I just go down here, I'm gonna bust up through
1,000 meters. That would take you no time at all, maybe an hour or two. Back home in Seattle, I climbed Mount Si, 3,000 vertical feet, in exactly an hour. We did less than that today, and it took us 6 hours, to give you an idea how limiting altitude is. We're gonna take a good rest tonight, take a walk up towards Camp 2 tomorrow. Then the following day we're gonna move up there and give ourselves a chance to acclimatize here.
Nice one, cool. So again, apologies guys for my lack of Zoom navigation there. So we've climbed through the icefall now. We're gonna hit a couple of questions there. I'd like to start with Mike. Mike, what do you think, what is the one thing that you want your climbers to have at the front of their minds as they go through the icefall? How do you stay safe in an environment like this?
Well, really, speed is safety in the icefall. You don't want to delay in there. You don't want to be sitting around taking long breaks or anything like that. There are, as I mentioned in that video, there are blocks hanging above you. Seracs can come down, big blocks can move. So you want to keep moving through there. But, you know, I'm really glad that PS said earlier that her toughest stretch was going through the ice fall. It catches a lot of people off guard. They think it's right out of base camp. It's going to be easy, but you've got these steep steps, these exposed ladder crossings, and you're dealing with the thin air. So, you know, you can't find a nice steady rhythm. And that's why we recommend doing some interval training in preparation for Everest, so that you're ready for that kind of up and down undulating terrain.
Awesome. And actually, that's a great question for PS. PS, did you actually find that as you acclimatized and you had to do those rotations, did the climbing get easier through the ice fall?
Yeah, I think I got faster by about 1 hour, like as we went through. I mean, I was still behind the guys who were like practically racing through the ice fall, but it got better. Having said that, the ice fall is also always changing. So by the time we finished all the rotations, got back down from the summit, we were taking a different route, like through the ice fall. So it's not like we have that route all memorized and it's just piece of cake, but it's actually changing. And then you find yourself going up different like steep sections or coming down different like large gaps and steps throughout the whole expedition.
Awesome. And we've got a couple of questions coming in on the chat box, which is where we're kind of monitoring those questions, by the way, versus the Q&A. We're looking at them in the chat box. But Mike, you know, how many rotations, how many times do you go through the ice, would you say?
Great question. So we do, at Climbing the Seven Summits, we do 3 rotations plus that Lobuche climb. So we consider Lobuche to be one of our rotations. The first rotation, if you're to do 4 on the mountain, you might go up to Camp 1, drop back down. So we skip that rotation. Our first trip, we go up Camp 1, spend a few nights there, head up, at least tag Camp 2, if not spend a night at Camp 2, come back down, rest, and then next rotation, head up, try and tag Camp 3, come back down and rest, and then we're ready for the summit bid. So 3 rotations for us. And I just want to mention quickly that, you know, a lot of people might be unfamiliar with the term rotation or climbing with rotations. On Everest, you know, the altitude is so extreme that you really need to drop back down in between your time spent at high altitude to rest at base camp. You can't rest on the mountain. You need to drop back down, rest before going higher on the next rotation. So that's why we do that.
Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Well, again, lots of questions coming in. We're going to try and get to some of those at the end. Lots of ground to cover. So we're going to move up now and head from basically the top of the ice fall through the Western Combe.
I'll give you a quick tour of the peaks behind me here. I'll try not to go blind. It is incredibly sunny right now. It's probably 90 degrees, and the reflection of the sun off the snow is incredibly intense. You can see I've got my shirt off. It's that hot up here, but if I leave my shirt off for more than 5 or 10 minutes, I'll get burned, especially with my pale lager skin. So anyway, up behind us, we've got the route going to Camp 2. You can see some boys working their way up the LHOTSE face. That's LHOTSE, this peak just behind me. Nuptse over here, and then Mount Everest is just behind up there. You can't quite see the summit from here, but that's where we're headed.
The next section of the climb we are showing you takes us above Camp 1, through the Western Combe and past Camp 2 to the base of the LHOTSE face. The Western Combe, named by Mallory, combe is Welsh for valley, is a broad, gently undulating glacial valley basin. We will climb through the combe numerous times on our rotation, once to Camp 2, again to Camp 3, and then finally on our summit bid.
Why do we do these rotations? It's a great question. Most other peaks that are not incredibly extreme altitude like Mount Everest, we simply double carry up, so we'll carry a load up drop a load, come back down, and then move up the following day, or we simply just climb our way up the mountain. But a mountain as big as Mount Everest, you make a foray up the mountain and you're so tired trying to acclimatize that you need to come all the way back down to base camp, rest and recover, and then make another foray up the mountain, get a little bit higher, acclimatize a bit more, come back down, rest again, and then head on up to the summit. So on Mount Everest, we're doing 3 rotations. Some teams do 2. We find we have better success with 3. So this is the second of 3 rotations, trying to make it to Camp 3, 24,000 feet without oxygen. And after this rotation, we should be able to drop down, rest, recover for 4 or 5 days. It takes your body 4 or 5 days to recover, even at base camp, after being up here high on the mountain. And then we'll sneak up. Camp 2, take a rest day. Camp 3, Camp 4, high camp. Go to the summit from there and come all the way back down. So even the summit bid on Mount Everest is 5 or 6 days long. So just the summit bid itself is as long as climbing most large peaks elsewhere in the world. That's how grand the scale is on this mountain.
While the climbing here is more relaxed, the altitude still makes it challenging. You must continue to stay focused and not let your guard down. There are objective hazards from avalanche danger from the surrounding peaks to lateral crevasses and navigating vertical crevasse walls en route to Camp 2. The greatest impression of the Coombe is the scale that it gives. Being able to see the summit from afar, the steep walls of Nuptse and the west shoulder hemming in on either side, and the LHOTSE face ahead. It is typically 2 to 4 hours from Camp 1 to Camp 2, and it's important to leave early because once the sun is high, it can be unbearably hot. You'll spend a good few nights at Camp 2. Like an advanced base camp, this is where we stage for the upper mountain. It's a fairly safe, flat camp with significant infrastructure. Beyond Camp 2, it's a short climb to the Bergschrund and the beginning of the next main phase of the route, the LHOTSE face.
Awesome, cool. So we'll have a really quick discussion here, and we won't take too long because we will try and get through all the video content so we can get to some of your excellent questions at the end. But starting with you, Mike, what's a strategy in the Western Coombe?
The climbing is easier through the Coombe than getting up the ice fall. But, you're still at high altitude. Your body is struggling to acclimatize. So you're moving slow. It's hard going. It gets really hot on the glacier once that sun is up. So you want to leave early. I think typically we leave about 6 a.m. You're in the sun for a bit of that time. But if you get to Camp 2, by 10 a.m. or so, you don't spend too much time in the sun. But just like through the ice fall, you want to keep moving. As I mentioned in the video, there are objective hazards, potential for avalanches coming down off Nuptse and off the western shoulder. So you want to keep moving and be careful where you take a break. You don't want to sit underneath a big couloir coming off Nuptse. You want to be as far away from those vertical slopes as you can.
Awesome. And one for you, Mark. I'm sorry, I know my Aussie accent, I sound like Mike and Mark sound similar, so I'll try really hard to enunciate that well for you guys. Mark, how did you find climbing in the Western Coombe? What was it like for you?
Yeah, it was by far the easiest, but don't confuse easy with not dangerous. Definitely as we were going along, you could see when we were going to Camp 2, where an avalanche had come and covered the trail. And so had you been there on that avalanche, there would have been no outrunning that avalanche. And so it is, even though it's a little bit easier than some of the other segments, let's not confuse that with safe.
Awesome, great advice. Okay, guys, how about we tackle the LHOTSE face, the infamous LHOTSE face. Let's take a look at that. At the terminus of the Western Combe, we come to the Bergschrund, which delineates the start of the LHOTSE face, an unrelenting wall of glacial blue ice which gives access to the highest camp on Everest, the South Col. A serious test in fitness and endurance, it averages 40 to 50 degrees with occasional 80-degree bulges for hours at a time at extreme altitude. The face is punctuated by Camp 3, which can take 5 to 10 hours to reach.
To give you an idea, it's about 2,000 vertical up to this camp. Took us about 5 hours. Sea level usually takes me about an hour to do 3,000 vert. So obviously the air is thin. We're at less than half an atmosphere. The going is very, very slow up here.
Our strategy is generally to tag Camp 3 on our second rotation and sleep here on our summit bid to reduce the risk of altitude illness before we are fully acclimated.
We just pulled into Camp 3 on the LHOTSE face. Absolutely glorious day. A little bit of wind, but reports from the summit are it was pretty good up there today. We're 24,300 feet. It's at 7,300 meters without oxygen. We're absolutely knackered going out, but that's part of the game, right? Enjoy you off in the distance, looking down at the Western Combe. Camp 2, you can see our Camp 3 just perched in the middle of this vertical mile-high face. The Sherpas painstakingly dug this camp in. A ton of work at this altitude. And I'll show you the route. We'll take tomorrow through the Yellow Band, up the Geneva Spur, and into the South Col. You can see the plume coming off the summit of Everest right now. If you look closely, you can actually see some climbers just below the south summit. That's your goal over the next couple of days. We get to sip some O's tonight. This is the first place we can put on oxygen. We'll be on oxygen all the way above here. So I'm looking forward to it. We'll get a good little rest, recovery here. Up to high camp at South Col tomorrow, and onto the summit the next day. Incredible views. I'm looking at Joyu, Gaichung Kong, Oopsie, just behind us right now. This is what it's all about.
8,000 meter winds for tomorrow morning starting 6 a.m. 44 knots, 12 o'clock 44 knots.
We constantly keep abreast of the weather and conditions as above Camp 3 our summit bid truly begins. It is 3 to 6 hours to the South Col, passing through the Yellow Band, which is a distinct layer of yellow rock which can be a source of bottlenecking, with climbers both ascending and descending. There are now 2 lines set up, an uphill and a downhill line, to help ease that congestion. The next landmark to look out for is the Geneva Spur, a series of rock benches leading to a final steep pitch before the flat traverse into the col. Rockfall out of the LHOTSE cooler can be common between the Yellow Band and the Geneva Spur. With the steepness, there are no good places to take a break between Camp 3 and the top of the spur, so make sure you're pre-rigged with water and food in your pockets. This may be your first time climbing on oxygen, and there's always going to be a learning curve to get accustomed to climbing with a mask on your face. Arriving into the South Col is a great achievement, but we need to remain vigilant. We are now in the death zone, where the amount of oxygen is insufficient to sustain human life for an extended period of time.
This is Mike Hamill reporting live from the death zone, South Col, 8,000 meters. We just rolled in. Everyone feels terrible at this point. It was a long, hard day. I'd show you around the South Col a little bit. You can see the camp over here behind me. This is our setup. one of the most miserable places on Earth. It's always snowing, always blowing. This is a rare lull that we're getting now, but it's always cold as hell, and with the lack of oxygen, makes it even worse.
The South Col, sometimes called Camp 4, is the final and last camp on Everest and our staging point for our summit bid.
Okay, congratulations guys, you're now at the South Col. Now I'm very aware of the time, and it is evident that we are going to run over a little bit, so I hope that you'll all either stay up and have another midnight stack or hang out with us for a little bit longer because I think we're getting to the pointy end of the climb, and some of the questions coming in are fantastic. Let's have a quick chat about that LHOTSE face. Mike, how many times do you end up climbing the LHOTSE face?
So you touch Camp 3 on your last rotation before the summit rotation. So essentially you're climbing halfway up the LHOTSE face, head back down, rest, and then you climb the whole LHOTSE face on the summit bid. So essentially 1.5 times you're on the LHOTSE face.
Awesome. And now moving to Mark. Mark, we've had a question come in as well about using the oxygen mask for the very first time, climbing on oxygen on your summit rotation. How did you find using those oxygen systems for the first time?
Two things, necessary and difficult. It's not natural. It's a lot of things can go wrong with it, but they're top of the line. It's a top of the line oxygen system, but it's not natural, and it does take some getting used to. And thank goodness we don't need them down here at sea level.
Yeah, I feel a little bit claustrophobic sometimes. And PS, how did you find using the oxygen masks, and what were the challenges for you on the LHOTSE face?
I think oxygen was really sweet. I mean, it's great because you feel a lot less with the effort, especially going up the LHOTSE face because it's very exposed and very steep. So for me, when we were doing our rotation, it was very windy, and it's the kind where I almost get like thrown and blown off. So my guide had to literally hold and anchor me down on the LHOTSE face. Yes.
Yeah, pretty wild. I've had a funny question come in on the chat. Does the oxygen mask feel similar to a scuba diving mask? If anyone has done scuba and climbed Everest, how does it compare?
I think the way we breathe through that oxygen mask is kind of the same. Like, just remember to be using your mouth and taking in the oxygen.
Nice, cool. Well, again, we're going to come back to some of those great questions. We're going to head up to the South Col now. We're at the South Col, and we're going to head to the summit.
Well, it all comes down to this rotation. We've put in 6-7 weeks now to get ourselves into position to go for the summit. We've been training for months, if not years, for this opportunity. It all comes down to this. A bit of nerves, a lot of fatigue. Our bodies have just been pushed to the limits over the last 6 weeks or so at altitude. But we're there. We're ready to go for it.
Summit day is potentially the most dangerous day of the expedition, with exposure to hazards like acute altitude illness, frostbite, fatigue, exposure, potential falls and traffic jams. Experienced guidance here is critical. You can expect summit day to take anywhere between 6 to 12 hours on the ascent, depending on pace and traffic, and as a general rule, half of that time to return to the col. It is helpful to think of summit day as an extended push from Camp 3 with a period of time resting at the South Col in the afternoon and early evening on oxygen before the summit bid begins in earnest later that same night. We depart the South Col for the summit in the dark to take advantage of the calmest part of the day, avoid bottlenecks, and given the sheer length of the climb, we need all the hours we can get. The easiest climbing of the day is up to the first landmark, the balcony, which takes 3 to 4 hours.
Here's what the last push into the balcony, 27,000 feet, looks like during the day. I didn't take any video at night because you can't really see much. Anyway, that's looking up at 27,000 feet. And then from there, you bang a left and head up towards the south summit. And now the true summit just starting to open up over there again. Gnarly knife edge ridge.
To get an idea of the pitch of this leg, let's look back down.
This is the route up to the balcony. The first half of summit day on Everest. You can see the South Call tents down below. Some people working their way up the LHOTSE face. And you can see the LHOTSE couloir all the way to the summit right there.
The balcony is the best break spot en route to the summit, so most people stop here for a sip and a snack and to change oxygen bottles.
Here's the crew chilling at the balcony.
The next stretch to the south summit is usually 3 hours, with some short, steep rock steps before a long ridge climb. From the south summit, you will finally see the famed Cornice Traverse, the Hillary Step, and the final slope to the summit. The route narrows beyond the south summit with huge exposure on either side, which can cause bottlenecking. The wind here is also something to plan for, to avoid your oxygen mask and your eyes freezing. Most famously, the Hillary Step is the last significant obstacle on the way to the summit. The step changed in the 2015 earthquake from a vertical rock pitch to a more forgiving and gradual slope that it is today. A short 20-minute traverse and you will find yourself literally on top of the world.
This is my sixth summit. This is going to be a culmination of my career so far. Feels amazing to be up here. Absolutely exhausted. I'm going to take the oxygen off for a few seconds.
Everest. It's a huge physical and mental undertaking which requires a single-minded focus. But you will find each step of its 8,850 metres life-changing.
Nice one, guys. You're all at the summit of Everest. It's pretty crowded today up there by the look of things. And don't worry, we will answer some of these questions about crowding. But, you know, I'd love to get a little take from PS and Mark. Like, you know, maybe I'll throw to PS first. But how has climbing Everest actually changed you as a person? What did you learn about yourself from undertaking that massive challenge?
For me, it's like a 15-year dream come true. So that whole journey over the 15 years was really quite something, about learning how to manage myself and focus and just getting the confidence to know that if I focus on something, I can get towards it.
Beautiful. And Mark, what about you? How did it change you as a person?
It really made it clear that basically all things are possible. Sometimes you need to turn your brain off and just go and suffer. And, you know, I don't think anybody that undertakes this should go into it. You can't have a clear understanding of the suffering that it takes, but you should have some understanding that it's going to take some suffering. But it's changed my life in the ability to sort of withstand hard things. That would be by far the number one thing.
Awesome. And you know, you actually summited, Mark, on your second attempt. What was the difference, you know, between that first and that second time?
Without going too far overboard with the commercial, frankly, it was CTSS, the infrastructure, and then for me also being one-on-one with an incredibly special human being, with an incredibly special guide, Big Tindy. And for me, that made all of the difference.
Well, we'll have to put you on the payroll. I didn't expect that one. Thank you. That's really sweet. Yeah, you guys are a really good match. And PS, you know, we actually, you know, one for the chicks in the audience, we have a lot of female climbers that often feel a little bit like, well, it's a male dominated space. You know, they're always worried about pace as female climbers. You know, you're petite, you're absolutely an endurance athlete, but, you know, is there any advice that you would give to the women who feel a little bit intimidated sometimes and hesitate to take on this goal?
Right. Well, first of all, the mountain doesn't care or doesn't differentiate whether you're male or female. I think there's enough space for each of us to find our own pace, especially if we're females and not like catching up with the guys, which was quite often in my case, because the guys were really strong and just like flying ahead. But it's still important. And like I said, there was space to anchor on my own pace that was comfortable and okay and sustainable. And just go with that. Don't let that bother you. And if you want to, you could get like a personal Sherpa or personal guide if you're overly concerned with like catching up.
Awesome, thank you. And one for you, Mike. We haven't heard from you in a while. I've actually had lots of questions coming in around like age, actually, like, you know, what is kind of the minimum age that people can climb? What's the maximum age? We've got a couple of people in their 50s wondering, you know, is it too old? Is it still feasible? Tell us a little bit about the age of clients and how that impacts it.
Yeah, you know, I think the average age over the years that I've seen of Everest climbers has been, you know, kind of late 40s, early 50s. I think it's gotten younger, maybe the last 4 or 5 years. But, you know, last year we had a young lady from Kosovo, Marika, if you're watching and listening, she was 16. And, you know, we've had people in their 60s. You know, I've summited with folks in their 60s. I think the record is maybe in his 80s, a Nepali or Japanese guy. I'm not sure which one has the record currently, but so, you know, I think it's really personal. It really depends on kind of your fitness and your dedication to the task, but there's a very wide age range.
Yeah, and is sort of mid 50s too late or still feasible?
Totally feasible. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And talking about, you know, the variance in our clients and the people that are attracted to climbing Everest, you know, we know that there is you know, no one size fits all approach. You know, we have to offer lots of different options for people to be successful. Mike, can you run us really quickly? We are running a little bit low on time. I'm hoping everyone's cool to stay with us.
Yeah.
We will be recording it if you do have to leave. We understand. You can catch this, and we might even do a 4th episode just on Q&As because we've got so many amazing questions. But yeah, can you give us a quick rundown on the various options and kind of how they play?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It's not a one size fits all scenario. We really try and customize the program for the individual climber, and that really depends on your experience level. Some people come in with multiple 8,000 meter peaks under their belts. Others have maybe climbed Denali and Aconcagua and aren't as comfortable at these extreme altitudes. And, you know, people have different price points as well. So climbing the 7 summits, we essentially have 3 main options. We have kind of a Sherpa-led, Sherpa-supported option. Then we've got our kind of traditional Western guided team. And then we've got the private one-on-one climbing option, which is, you know, kind of the deluxe Ferrari option. And there are different price points. And again, you know, it depends on your experience, which way you'd go. We try and work with everyone to make sure they get the program that's right for them. And the other thing I'd mention is, you know, a lot of people are joining us for speed ascents now as well. So these hypoxico speed ascents, people pre-acclimatize in a altitude chamber at home to reduce the amount of time they spend on the mountain. And, you know, for busy professionals, that's helped a lot to allow them to be able to do this Everest expedition without spending 2 months away from home. So, you know, really, there are lots of different ways to customize the programs for whoever the climber is. I know Mark and PS were on two different options. I think those options worked great for them. You know, Mark went with more of the private Sherpa guided option. And as he mentioned earlier, he had a great time climbing with Tendy, and I thought that was right for him. And PS was on our Sherpa guided team, internationally certified Sherpa guided team. And that worked really well for her.
And talking about those speed ascents, how many, we had a question earlier about how many rotations that means people would do. How does it impact the actual climb once you've pre-acclimatized at home? The other question that we've got is, what are the altitude chambers? They're called hypoxico. So once you've acclimatized in your hypoxico tent at home, how many rotations, how does it affect your actual climb?
You know, it depends on how aggressive you are with the altitude chamber at home. We had a climber, Ed, with us last year who was very aggressive with that. And he climbed the mountain door to door in a month, essentially. People have done it quicker than that. Some people have done it slightly slower. But, you know, typically if you do the altitude chamber at home, we might have you do one long rotation on the mountain, come back down, rest, and then go for the summit. So we still want to play it safe. And there is some natural acclimatization that's part of that process, but it can reduce the length of your trip by 2 weeks, a month, even more.
Awesome. And now, you know, once we've, I had some slides, but you actually talked through them. So sorry, that was my fault, guys. Again, just for the essence of time, I think we'll move straight out to our Q&A because we do, again, have so many, and then we'll probably wrap up in about 10 minutes here. But one of the main questions that's coming through is around traffic and crowding and the conga lines. You know, how can you possibly mitigate that with the popularity of Everest these days? What's a safe way of mitigating those risks?
Yeah, well, you know, we saw this last year. It was a particularly busy year, and the summit window was smaller, so a lot of people were going for the summit at the same time. But I think it all comes down to experience. If you're climbing with an experienced company or expedition leader, whatever it may be, there are lots of strategies for avoiding those crowds, picking the right summit day, and also picking the time you go for the summit on your summit day, hopefully getting out before the crowds, or maybe waiting back a little bit and then going up after more of the crowds have been able to summit and get back down. But, you know, I know Mark last year, they made a brilliant call, he and his guide Tendy, to go up early, and they had very few people on their summit day, you know, very little crowding. That worked great for them. We had another team that held back, went up on the 27th, so 4 or 5 days after the majority of climbers, and they had the summit day all to themselves, and it was the best day of the year. So there are lots of strategies there to employ to avoid the crowds. You just need that experience of multiple expeditions kind of dealing with these issues.
Nice. And guys, just for everyone listening, we do have a episode next week. We're going to be doing a summit bid specific episode next week at the same time, where we might go into a little bit more detail around crowding and passing people and stuff. But quickly on that, Mark and PS, do you guys have anything to say about, you know, how it felt, what you felt about the crowds up there?
So I went up on the actual day when that famous photo was taken with that long line going up. But because we set off ahead of all the crowds, so we were one of the first groups to be at the summit. But then we hit the crowd coming down, so it was a bit tricky navigating. But like what Mike was saying, it's really about the strategy, like what time you set off, and if you're moving quite small and nimble, you might be able to overtake at some points along that line to pass the crowds.
Yeah, and again, for me, you know, having, you know, being one-on-one with Tendy, we were able to do a lot of things that were a little bit different, even from our team, much less everybody that was on the mountain. We summited on the first day anybody on the mountain summited, and there were no lines, there were no crowds. In fact, you I've got a video of Camp 4, and ours was the only tent up on Camp 4 when we got there. So again, the customization and the personalization that CTSS was able to provide was fantastic.
Nice. Awesome. And then moving on, we've also kind of got some questions about the rope fixing. Mike, how do you normally handle kind of when the route is fixed and who does the rope fixing? Mike? Oh, sorry, you might be, are you there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Can you hear me now?
You can.
So generally, the route from base camp to Camp 2, that's fixed by the icefall doctors, who you've probably all heard about, a team that's hired by the SPCC, the environmental organization on Everest. Our permit fees go to pay those guys, and they keep the route. They're on the route almost every day, fixing the route to make sure it's good for us to climb to Camp 2. And then above Camp 2, historically, we all cooperate, work together to form a team of Sherpa that will go up, fix that line as early as possible in the season to get that route in place for climbers. And, just a couple points there. My first time on Everest, 2005, the rope fixing was horrendous. There are these old little pieces of string, it seemed like, and they were all ratty and tattered, and you just clip into a bunch of ropes, and then it would dive into the snow where it's been covered. And it was really poor back then. The rope fixing has got a lot better. We use a nice new Kern mantle rope every year. It's much safer than it was there, and we're really investing a lot in that safety aspect. And we try and have 2 ropes wherever we can as well, an up and a down line, so that's easier for people to move past each other and mitigate some of those crowding traffic issues.
Awesome. And questions about weather. We've got some questions about the weather reports and how do we, I think there was a great question from Sam. I'll have to go back, but just up here about, whether we use the Swiss weather reports or what's our weather strategy? Yeah,
there are lots of different great weather reports out there these days. Michael Fagan in Seattle, Mark de Keyser in Europe, the Swiss forecast. And, generally we might subscribe to a few of those forecasts. It's super important to nail the weather. And the more of these forecasts we can look at, the better to kind of pinpoint exactly when we want to go, when we want to launch. We're sharing information amongst teams in base camp as well. But luckily, the weather forecasting is so good these days that we're usually able to nail it. Sometimes by the hour and by the altitude, exactly what you're going to be seeing for weather. Sometimes it's off, but it's much better now than it was 15 years ago when I started climbing on Everest.
Awesome. And we do there's a couple of questions coming in as well around COVID, and what our strategies are going to be for COVID, and I'll quickly address that. Obviously, we're taking our recommendations from all the health authorities. There are lots of different things that you can do to mitigate those risks and make sure teams are healthy. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball around the world as to when we all might be able to travel more safely, but our kind of take at Climbing the Seven Summits is that our climbers, our clients, and our staff, their safety and their health are really highly important. So we don't know when we'll all be able to climb again in the mountains, but trust us, as soon as they open up safely, we'll be there, and we'll be taking lots and lots of different precautions around how to do that, making sure our camps are really clean, social distancing is maintained, etc. So hopefully that answers that a little bit. It's hard to be specific exactly about when right now, but trust us, we're on it every day watching. And then the other question I had quickly is, Mark, PS, how did you choose to climb from the south side? Why did you choose that side? Mike, obviously, I'll get him to throw in his 2 cents afterwards as to why Climbing Seven Summits traditionally favour the south side. But Mark and PS, why did you guys choose to climb from this side, this route?
So I was looking at both the north and the south, but largely a lot of the decision was because I was talking to Mike and deciding to go with CTSS. But there are advantages like the evacuation, rescue, the whole like support setup, etc., which I think Mike will go into in a bit.
Nice. Yeah, I promise we're not paying these guys, hey? Mark, why did you choose to climb from the south side?
Yeah, I mean, so there are pluses and minuses from a danger and difficulty standpoint between the two. I won't get into the nuances of those. Mike can do that better. But I also think there are real differences between climbing from Nepal and climbing from Tibet. And I've been climbing in Tibet on a Shishapangma expedition, and I like Nepal. Let's just say this. I'll just leave it at that. I like Nepal much, much better than Tibet. And I think that climbing there ultimately is a safer thing, all things considered, to include what country you're climbing from.
Awesome. And Mike, finally to you, why do we climbing Seven Summits traditionally choose the south side?
Again, there are pluses and minuses, and there's history on the north side and on the south side. And I've been on both sides. I've done 13 expeditions from the north side, not on Everest, but Choi Yu and Shishapangma, places like that. But for us, we're really driven by safety. And my personal opinion is that it's a safer proposition from the south side, mainly because of the infrastructure that we have. I talked a little bit about the rope fixing, but we've got a lot of strong teams, a lot of strong Sherpa on the south side that if there is need for a rescue, we can mobilize really easily. But a big piece of that is the helicopters, being able to get the helicopters into Camp 2 if need be to definitive care in Kathmandu in 45 minutes is huge. Also, having a little shout out to Everest DR, Himalayan Rescue Association, having those guys there at base camp as a resource for us is huge. We use them all the time, and to have their professional opinion, their professional help there is really important to us. So, pluses and minuses. I think Summit Day on the south side is a little bit safer. It's an easier shot if you need to get someone down. North side, there's more traversing, but up until Summit Day, it's probably safer climbing on the north side down low. Personally, for me, it's just windier, drier, less hospitable on the north side. So I prefer the Nepalese south side.
Nice one. And guys, again, apologies that we've run way over time, but hopefully it's good content that you've learned a lot and you're feeling prepared. Just before we sign out, Mark, PS, thank you guys again so much for joining us. But is there anything else that you guys as climbers, often, kind of being in the same shoes as many of our audience today, is there anything else that you guys want to add? Is there any little piece of advice that you wish you had, or anything that we haven't touched on today that you want to? I'll let you go first, PS. Oh no, Mark turned his microphone on first. He's got it.
Well, I just think that it is truly an epic journey. And I think people get caught up in the climb. But I do think a lot of mental preparation needs to go into the fact that you're going to take 45 days to 2 months. And most days, you're not doing anything. Most days are acclimatization days, and you're not climbing, and you're at altitude, and that's its own sort of mental difficulty. And I think that's actually a real struggle for people who tend to be type A, who are setting off on the adventure of their lifetime, and then the realization sets in that most days you're going for a short walk and just breathing. And so it's not just the physical aspects of the excruciatingly difficult physical aspects of the climb. I think it's actually the excruciating difficult mental aspects of the climb, being away from home, being away from friends and family. That can be challenging. And I think and I don't think there's a good way to prepare for it except to know that it's coming.
Perfect. And PS?
Same, I kind of echo what Mark has said. I think It's not so much the physical preparation. I mean, that's the part that you can control, which I think looking at the questions there, most people who are interested would do the research, call Mike and talk to him a lot about what to expect, get a training peak in, etc. But it's really the mental. So kind of know why you're there for 2 months in a base camp, suffering, not having a nice, like, all the luxuries that we have.
Come on, PS, we put it on.
Just know why you're there and being able to pace yourself out for 2 months and not let little setbacks along the way get to you. That is really the challenge.
Awesome. Such good content. And guys, I know there's lots more questions still that we haven't answered and we haven't got to. And I'm hoping that I can encourage you guys to join us next week. We're going to be here, same place, same time. Next episode is going to be on the summit bit itself, where we're going to delve into the summit in more depth. And then the following week we'll be going into training specifically for Everest and gear as well. So we haven't answered some of those questions so that you can come back time and time again. And I think we might have to put on a fourth episode to answer some of these Q&As that we haven't got to. But I don't want to hold you guys for too much longer because we've already stolen some of your days and nights. So thank you all so much. Before we do go, if you have enjoyed today, and this is by no means any obligation, but if you have enjoyed today and you want to show your gratitude, we are running a fundraiser to support the Sherpa and their lost wages during this time. And you can find, I think Mike can post that up on the social media, the link, but it's through our not-for-profit Tiger of the Snows Fund. So feel free to show your gratitude that way. You might end up at a feedback form if my if my technological skills have got you there. Please take the time to do that. And the other thing is you can continue this discussion. We just started a Facebook group called Climbing the Seven Summits Community. If you guys jump on our Facebook page, there's a link to that too. And that group is a really good place to discuss all of your questions and keep discussing with us. And then of course you can email us. We are actually on the end of our emails, even though we should all be having a holiday at this time in our houses. Anyway, guys, until next week, stay safe and stay well. And thank you so much to Mark and PS for joining us, and for all of you guys who tuned in around the world. We'll be back next week. I hope that we'll see you all there. Remember, you do have to register. So yeah, see you then, guys. Cheers. Thanks so much. Bye. I've got to actually end the meeting though now. See, this is when my technology shows. All right. Thanks, guys.